Welcome to BlockRocket's panel NFT and Gaming. The details of this will be explained by our moderator, Sarah, right after my quick introduction. So as this event is going to be big, everyone is going to be muted except for the speakers. If you have any question or suggestion during the talk, you can scan this QR code and join our WhatsApp group to discuss more. That is from my side. I hope you enjoy the event. And now I will hand over to Sarah to start.
Thanks, Alexandra, for introduction. And hello, everyone. Welcome to another panel event on NFT and gaming. So before we start the panel event, I would like to introduce from my side. I'm Sagar from BlockRocket. We are an early stage investor into blockchain-based startups. Basically, we invest in Web3 startups with a ticket size range of 100K to 500K euros, and we help them with networking, matchmaking, advisory, and mentorship. As you can see, we are like a quite big ecosystem partners from the blockchain space, mostly like based in Germany and DACH region, but we are also expanding our wings into Asian market and as well as on the US market. These are some of the portfolio startups we have invested in past couple of months. There are also a couple of more investment coming in the near future. So feel free to check out our LinkedIn or Twitter page for more updated. If you have any questions regarding our portfolio startup, feel free to reach out to us, and we won't be more than happy to answer your questions. Of course, this is the team. So if you are early stage startups building from your garage and building the next thing in the Web3 or blockchain space, feel free to reach out to us. We are quite active on LinkedIn or Twitter also, as well as you can reach out to us or directly from our website. So moving further, as we discussed, today's topic is like NFT and gaming, as everyone is like quite skeptical about that, and recent sentiment is also changing. We will start with the introduction from each of the speakers. So I would like to ask first Tim from Wenley. Tim, maybe a few words about yourself.
Yes, hi Sagar, hi everyone. I'm Tim Dirksens, co-founder and CEO of Bentley. Bentley is a blockchain technology provider within the Web3 and gaming space. We have the notion of helping the game developers enter the Metaverse using Web3, and as well as the developers, also the end users. We focus on 3 products: wallet technology, NFT technology, and marketplace technology, and try to make it as seamless as possible for a Web2 type of company that is entering a Web3 technology and ecosystem.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Moving further, we have John from Hero Capital. He's a blockchain gaming expert at Hero Capital. John, maybe a few words about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Hello, yeah, so I've been in games for about 20 or over 20 years now, blockchain games since 2018. I do various things, as pointed out. I work with Hero Capital, which is a VC out of London focused on gaming, and I'm their blockchain venture specialist. I also do some consulting for a handful of blockchain games companies, and I run my own Substack and do a whole bunch of sort of research around that. So yeah, looking forward to talk today. I think as ever, the blockchain game space sort of is very sort of early, but we're seeing a lot of trends, and not all the trends are sort of going in the same direction. So I think there's lots of people who have lots of sort of expertise, but no one sort of really knows quite kind of where it's going at the moment. So lots up for debate.
Thanks a lot, John, for the introduction. Next, we have Arjun from Polygon. Polygon is making noise quite lately a lot. So yeah, Arjun, we are looking forward to hear a few words about yourself and what you guys are up to.
Sure thing. Hey guys, I'm Arjun. I head growth at Polygon. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years, ever since our mainnet went live, and I've been growing the ecosystem and different partnerships, etc. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here and discuss what's happening on the NFT and gaming side, and what we see happening in the months to come.
Thanks a lot, Arjun. Moving further, we have Carsten from Elite Game.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Sagar, for having me. I have the pleasure to run a very new startup. We are around for a year now in stealth mode, but having come out just last week with our website and announcement of 2 games. Because you know what? We are publishing games, and as I'm going to talk about more here today with us, it's not necessarily that they all need to be blockchain games, but in all of our games, who will be participating with blockchain technology in our elite games here. And as it comes to some backlashes or some strong wins in the field, I have had the pleasure to run a startup, building it to 150 million euros annually, co-built that to 500 million players. That was called Gameforge here in Germany. And we have experienced something a bit similar with the advent of free-to-play back then. So that gives us some ideas on how it could be possibly this time around. Looking forward to the discussion.
Looking forward to Carsten. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Last but not least, we have Abhishek from IndieGG. Abhishek, maybe a few words about you and the IndieGG.
Sure. Hey, you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, great. Hey everyone. This is Abhishek from IndieGG. I lead business at IndieGG. IndieGG is a gaming guild which focuses on sort of onboarding, being the on-ramp for gamers into the Web3 space. Spent the last 1.5 years doing very deep research in the guild and gaming space, and we have a very strong thesis about how the next multi-million users will eventually get onboarded to crypto through gaming. And yeah, I mean, at IndieGG, at our guild, we are doing everything in our capacity to sort of grow the market, both from a demand side perspective and a supply side perspective, by bringing more quality Web3 games to the Indian market, and then eventually translating a lot of Web2 users to eventually play Web3 games.
Interesting. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. Moving further, I would like to ask first question to the team from Wenley. First of all, team, congratulations for raising $23 million in your Series A round. And so, how do you see, like, how closely? I mean, you are quite closely working with Web3 guys and also gamers, right? So, how do you see the whole gaming ecosystem is getting built, and what are your plans to disrupt the gaming side when it comes to like Web3 space?
Yeah, so it's supporting the Web3 blockchain game companies a little bit more, providing them the right tools and services so that they can build a little bit faster and more cost effectively. But then also going a little bit deeper into the game engines and providing additional services so that they can leverage a game SDK. And where in the end, if it's a natural game developer that focuses on building through the game engine, that they would actually not need to integrate it on an API level. So that is one of the reasons why we raise the funds to also go deeper into our tech integrations.
Interesting. John, as you are also part of one of the VC firm, gaming-based VC firm, you are also yourself gamer plus 20 years. How do you see like current market sentiment, and do you think this affect the gaming companies and also like particularly gaming VCs regarding the current sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a sort of very big change over the last 12 months. So, I mean, certainly I would say up to sort of the start of 2021, those of us who were sort of active in sort of promoting blockchain games and talking about blockchain games were pretty much sort of ignored, maybe rightly so. But there's been that group of people who are coming from maybe the more sort of crypto blockchain environment. So Axie Infinity, those sort of people who've been around since 2018, they're very committed to sort of crypto values, and generally those people have not been so they've not been professional game developers. They've not had the experience of people like Carsten, and there's a certain type of product has been created up to this point, and some of those have been very successful. A lot of them haven't been, but it really took, I think, Axie Infinity for all its kind of current sort of problems that I guess we'll talk about. That really woke up the industry, the sort of what I would call the traditional games industry, and really now, when I talk to any traditional game developer, I'm more generally surprised about sort of how positively they're viewing what's happening in the market, and they may all what they're doing may not be public yet, but they are all sort of thinking and in many cases in hard development for products that may be in some cases taking existing products and sort of rebuilding sort of Web3 stuff around that. That may be doing brand new startups, but I think that that's sort of a long trend that's happening now over the next sort of 5 years. So I think the other thing with sort of crypto / blockchain is there's always something going on. Not always, often around the price of assets. And obviously for the last sort of what it has been 3 weeks now, it's been pretty choppy in terms of that. And while that kind of stuff, I would say it's not unimportant. I think you have to look at the sort of the broader trends. And I think in 6 months' time, whatever's happened to sort of Terra or Terra 2, whatever it's called now, that will sort of be seen as slightly irrelevant, and the price of some of these assets will sort of be seen as irrelevant because, from what I can see, the games industry has now sort of switched, and I think that there's still a lot of uncertainty. So there's lots of what sort of games are gonna win out? Is it going to be these more Axie Infinity, sort of Web3 crypto first games that have a lot of support from guilds, which is obviously where Axie sort of had this explosive growth? Will it be a bit more traditional? So, will it be some of the traditional game makers that we already know that obviously have great game making talent, that obviously have a lot of marketing, that have a lot of existing players to their game? Will they sort of switch some of those over to blockchain? I mean, that's the sort of thing I don't know. I might have some personal opinions on what I think is going to be easier. But to a large extent, I think, Axie Infinity was a product that came out that showed that if you could do this, a lot of people really cared about it. And that's the first step. And now the next step for the next sort of 6 to 12 months is we see, what sort of new product and a bit more sort of game focused. I think Axie Infinity is fine as a game. I'm not someone who I know some people do think Axie Infinity is a terrible game. I don't think it's a terrible game. I wouldn't say it's the best game out there. I don't think Sky Mobius would say it's the best game out there. But so we're still in this we're in a situation now where I think the foundations have been set, and there's a lot about what games are going to make it. As sort of Tim pointed out, there's an enormous amount of investment going into sort of these platform plays. So there's probably a dozen different sort of platforms that developers can integrate with. So effectively, people building like a Unity for blockchain games. There's all the wallet stuff. There's a whole bunch of sort of tech stack stuff that people are looking at. No one really knows what's going to win on that front. So there's very much, I see as the certainty that this is happening. There's a lot of short-term uncertainty on exactly what's going on and what's going to be the winners.
Interesting. Moving further, Arjun, I mean, since the last time we spoke, many things has been changed at Polygon, right? You guys in between raised like 400 million plus from Sequoia and other prominent VCs. At what level you guys are focusing on, particularly the gaming side ecosystem at Polygon? Because you are like a layer 2 infrastructure provider, one of the like a chain who is like really efficient when it comes to paying the gas price, right? Quite almost close to 0 cents. But yeah, happy to hear your opinions.
For sure, definitely. So at Polygon, of course, gaming has been a very big focus for us for almost like over a year. So in fact, back in, I remember now back in like December 2020 is when we had actually decided that, we wanted to set up like a separate team to sort of focus on gaming, and which is why, Polygon Studios was born. And then, it has grown into a big business now with, Ryan Watt now, who sort of was the previous head of YouTube Gaming. He has joined us to, help us grow on the gaming side. So of course, so gaming itself has gone through its own sort of life cycle. There was a time when, lots of games, etc., were picking up funding, but of late we've kind of realized that, so there are two main aspects of gaming, right? So one part is, of course, so when I look at gaming as an ecosystem, there is the supply side and there's the demand side, right? So the supply side essentially is all the different games which are going live on different platforms, and the demand side is basically the gamers themselves, like people who will be playing this game. So I think IndieGG is now trying to figure out how they can solve the demand side of problems, where how we can get more and more gamers to start experiencing some of these Web3 games. What we've done at Polygon, of course, is very aggressively scaled up a team to look at gaming across all aspects. So this is good games and gaming teams. This is gaming infrastructure. Top tier partnerships with big gaming studios, and also with gaming, let's say, infrastructure providers, like people who make gaming engines, people who sort of are looking at gaming graphics, people who are trying to figure out how to bring in sort of other elements within gaming. For example, how you could potentially use the different NFTs in gaming, and how you could maybe use those NFTs in other games, etc. So we've sort of looking at like gaming as a very sort of strategic piece, where there are many different moving parts, and we've now built a team which will allow us to sort of work with all of these different moving parts and allow us to sort of become like the go-to sort of chain for gaming. As of today, like basically all the top metaverses, be it Sandbox, Somnium Space, Decentraland, Decentral Games, Avaguchi, etc. Some of the most popular metaverses are live, all of them on Polygon, and we have many more sort of interesting projects launching, Blocktopia, etc. All of those are live on Polygon. So for us, gaming is a super strategic piece. I think what interests us a lot about gaming is the fact that gaming has the ability to bring in sort of millions of users into blockchain. Like, these are people who may not typically use blockchain technology, but because they're, experiencing either a play to earn game or something, along those lines, this is a great way to sort of help us solve mass adoption of blockchain technology. And ultimately, that's the singular goal at Polygon, which is to build the infrastructure, to build the kind of ecosystem which enables mass adoption. So that's why I think gaming for us has always been a very central piece, where we can draw lots and lots of users into blockchain. And then once you put, once these individuals are playing a different game, they're earning tokens, etc. Then the next question comes up, right? Like, what do you do with those tokens? And that's where sort of the ecosystem starts growing, where people start experiencing other sides of blockchain technology. So of course, gaming, very strategic piece, and we've made a lot of investments in that area, and we'll continue to do so even after our fundraise, etc. Like, now we have the wherewithal to sort of really aggressively grow our gaming sort of focus. So that's something what we've done. Of course, there are a lot of these conversations around how you could take some of these NFTs in gaming, how you could give them extra utility. What kind of teams should you back? How do you create great user onboarding? How do you solve other pieces? For example, top tier wallets which sort of enable users to use their or view their NFTs very sort of well, and at the same time brings in the kind of user experience which people are used to in sort of a typical Web2 like game. So there's several moving parts, but we are solving all of those. And then, I feel that as time progresses, we are becoming sort of the chain where most games would like to launch.
Interesting, Arjun. Abhishek, I mean, India is a huge market, right? 1.3 billion people, and one of the youngest country in the world. How the blockchain, like a gaming ecosystem is getting built. I mean, gaming is still not the part of India at all, but I mean, it's emerging, right? So IndieGG is part of Guild Game, and so you guys are building from their root. And how do you see whole ecosystem is getting built, and how many users you think will onboard in next 2 to 3 years or 5 years?
So I think this is a very, very pivotal question that we keep asking internally to ourselves, or what can we do to onboard the next 100 million users to Web3 gaming? The problem that we see today, obviously, we know India is a huge market, both in terms of size and in terms of the preferred medium of entertainment in the country today. We have more than 400 million gamers. After the number of smartphone users are north of 700 million users. The propensity to pay is going up. In terms of the amount of time that gamers spend after COVID, it doubled in number. So I think these are very, very relevant metrics for one to look at. The problem that we see in Web3 gaming today is games are not fun. Games are not entertaining. A lot of games that are being built today are just wrapped as financial instruments, financial DeFi primitives, with very basic static gaming layers built on top of it, with really poor or very, very basic graphics. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but we can't really take exceptions for that. So I think whatever Arjun said in terms of on the infra side, I think onboarding of users today is very, very difficult. A user has to sort of download a MetaMask wallet. There is a hindrance there because people don't know what blockchain. Neither do people want to know what blockchain is. They just want to play games. But the economies are not sound and sustainable. There is an acute hyperinflation problem that you see in every game today, and most games are sort of following very sort of Ponzi-nomics in terms of where growth of the game is sort of dependent on growth of new users. But having said that, I think whatever we've discussed, there is no substitute. Economy, infra, everything is not a substitute for a good game. You need to, if you want to onboard 100 million users to Web3 gaming in India, you need to give them quality games. There is no reason for a user to not play Web3 games and continue playing Web2 games if they get the same level of entertainment, but on top of that, they get some earning. On top of that, they have some property rights, which is ownership of assets, right? So I think that is our single most criteria. So, identifying really, really high quality games that is tailored to the Indian audience. And India is a very, very high in the mid-core and hardcore segment in India is a very high first-person shooter market. So people spend a lot of time playing games like Valorant, playing games like Free Fire, and similar games. Can we bring similar games to the Indian market that can easily sort of attract gamers from these sort of games for them to move to Web3 games, plus the earning component, plus the ownership component? So that's there. But having said that, I think we'll see this. I mean, we've not seen the inflection point yet. We're yet to see the inflection point, and we believe the inflection point will happen very soon. At IndieGG, internally within our team, we've now sort of grown to a very large community of 70,000 users. We have north of 2,500 3K scholars. We saw 50K people who minted our IndieGG badge, which is a representation identity of a user being an early adopter of Web3 gaming. I think all of that is happening, but at the same time, we spend a lot of time sort of creating the market for Web3 gaming. It's not easy. When Facebook went live or when Play Store and App Store went live, you didn't expect millions and millions of users that we see today to get onboarded in 1 to 2 years. I think it will play its own due course for mass adoption to happen. And I think players like Polygon, players like IndieGG, and a lot of other games like GGX, for instance, which is a game built by an Indian native sort of players. I think games like them will play an instrumental role to sort of move towards mass adoption.
Interesting. I think Carsten would be much more agree with you, Abhishek, because Carsten come from Web to gaming side. Carsten, what is your in general opinion about this whole noise in Web3 saga? As Abhishek also mentioned, like Pongenomics, and also John mentioned about Axie Infinity, which was like a first play to one gaming. I would like to hear your all conclusion on what we discussed the last 10 minutes.
Yes, so I appreciate the opinion of everybody on the panel. They're generally all right, but it's quite typical that we're meeting here to discuss gaming, and of course everybody related to it. But at 22 minutes in, I have the pleasure to firstly mention something. It's games. It is games, and as Abhishek was saying, it's about the fun of playing. I have all the sympathy if people can improve their lifestyle by earning in games, and that is actually something very nice, but it doesn't apply for the majority of the, the Western world or the developed world. They play for entertainment. And if you ask me as a player, I already hate the term GameFi. Nobody has mentioned it here yet because everybody understands it, but some people still use it. And of course, we use it as a term, but gamers want entertainment and they don't want to think about finances, and they really go mad if you want to put finance or money into their entertainment. They like it too much. And I fully understand why. However, there's another thing, Steve Jobs, God bless him, he always said in one sort or the other, customers do not always necessarily know upfront what they really want. And we know there's a huge uproar in gaming at the moment. But of course it's beneficial. This, as it was said by the former speakers here, the benefits of participation, the benefits of ownership, maybe making a little bit out of certain things that are being played. That is all very beneficial, and you just need to present it, yes, correctly, in a fun game. If it's not a fun game, it actually doesn't matter how many people you attract on day one. At the end of the day, maybe nobody will purchase the things anymore that you have been grinding in order to build up value. It works for a while and then it's dead. It must be entertaining, fundamental as a use case. And then secondly, I would say for mass adoption, and that might be a new point here on that panel still, you shouldn't force Web2 gamers into adoption. So it's true, it's great if you have wallets which can be logged into with socials and it will be easier to adopt, but you know what? Actually make it optional. We at Elite Games, we think it should be completely everything crypto optional. We did the same thing when it was called free to play. You can play for free, and if you want to, you can purchase something in the item shop. Micro trends, of course, in-app purchases in mobile nowadays. And the same thing here. You can play for free, you can purchase something in the in-app shop, and on the other side, the carrot hangs. Actually, if you want to, you can connect the wallet, and there will be certain benefits. And I believe with this, not forcing down the throat. With good quality games, we will indeed see these mass adoption possibilities over the next years.
Is that the reason you started Elite Game?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do admit that I have been in the space also like John for nearly 25 years, and I just couldn't sit by when I've seen last summer happening. So I have been personally very much involved in the space as a retail investor, and now I have seen that things are really happening in gaming. It had been around, of course, since 17, 18 or whatever, but then there were so much things happening that I couldn't sit by, and that's why we have started Elite Games as the goal to become the players publisher.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask the next question. Like any one of you can answer it. It's an open question. So at what level like NFTs are relevant for the in-game assets? Because I'm still trying to understand like NFTs are there. It goes long-term value proposition, but still like the game need to be interoperable, right? To change the in-game assets. So maybe one of you can start with answering the question, and maybe other will take over. So like at what level NFT will be like relevant in the in-game assets?
I think I can take that. I think there is no reason why any in-game asset should not be an NFT, because in the Web2 space, players end up spending a lot of the time and effort into creating the network effect of the game, and all the value eventually accrues to the developers of the game. I think you're seeing the right game design mechanisms sort of unfold in the industry. If you see a game like Skyweaver, you see every single thing that they do, and then the game is live on Polygon, so anyone who's interested can go play that game. You see a game like Skyweaver, or the game is off-chain, everything's off-chain, but the token components are on-chain. Now, why is it important? Anyone who plays that game is now able to obviously get rewarded, but this reward is generally lies on-chain, and it is immutable. Nobody can take it from them. They are able to trade it on a secondary market. They're able to exchange it with someone else, or they're able to collect it. So I think there is no reason why any in-game utility item should not be on-chain, primarily because the whole goal, that the whole idea of Web3 gaming space is to sort of provide digital property rights to users, which Web2 gaming could not provide.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a difference of opinion over there. For me, the use of blockchain technology is whenever you want to transfer something of value. I wouldn't argue that every in-game asset that exists is something of value. So I would actually say any in-game asset that you would consider as a valuable asset should be on blockchain.
I agree with Tim. Yes. So of course, it doesn't matter if you use a fantastic low gas sidechain like Polygon or a layer one, which does the same thing. And still, you wouldn't want to play on the blockchain. You don't need to anchor everything. But if there is value created, then absolutely, it's perfect that the user can own it himself and no longer needs to take recourse to some dodgy marketplaces where in the past gamers have always been able to exchange things for certain value, but with associated dangers in the transaction.
So, John, what is your opinion about this all in-game assets? Because you are both sides, right? You are also like writing the checks, and also you are like yourself is a gamer, so you are like also like a cast on 20 years in gaming space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of it depends a little bit on the product. So yeah, there are some games like Skyweaver, as mentioned, is a trading card game. So yeah, we've seen an enormous number of trading card games, you know, as blockchain games, because it just, those sort of games work really well as sort of something you would put on the blockchain, because basically you have cards, and you know, you could argue, I guess, kind of Magic was a sort of the first blockchain game without the blockchain, because you physically own the cards and you went and played them and could swap the cards and stuff. So, so I'm going to sort of take your question and sort of twist it a little bit, I think. So, and I sort of think one of the sort of problems we have had in these early stages is we've had so many trading card games and some of them have been good. I mean, I'm not an expert in trading card games, but we've had a lot of trading card games because trading card games are easy to put on the blockchain, and sort of everyone understands this card on the block. You know, this card in this trading card game, I own it, and I can do it. But the wider problem is, if you look at the market for trading card games, just doesn't matter if they're blockchain or not. You know, there's basically, me not being an expert, there's basically two. There's Magic and there's Hearthstone, and those are, you know, well-known, you know, probably multi-billion-dollar franchises, but they're not really mass market games. So one of the sort of problems I think we come to in the beginning, and partly because the tech's not where we want it to be, and partly because maybe some of the game designers are you know, maybe not as thoughtful as they otherwise might be, is we've ended up with a lot of games, the early blockchain games have been because they're on the blockchain rather than because this is a great game. And I kind of think more and more when I look at games with like an investment hat on, you know, there are lots of very talented people who are making some interesting products, but you know, sort of investor hat is always like, hey, how does this become $1 billion game? So there might be fantastic games you can make that are going to be quite niche, and I think there is actually in the long term there will be some really interesting niche blockchain games that will be economically sustainable in a way that they currently cannot be sustainable because they can't find a big enough audience. They can't market to a big enough, say, free-to-play audience to find the whales to build some quirky sort of niche thing. On blockchain is really great for that. But the other side of it is blockchain. I sort of think blockchain is more of a winner-takes-all market than we've seen before, purely because of this economic sort of modeling that goes on there. That, you know, I sort of think a little bit in my head, if I put $100 into a blockchain game, I think that makes it more likely that I'm going to put $100 into that same blockchain game than into a new blockchain game. So previously, you know, retention was all about, can you get people engaged, and they spent so much time, maybe some money, that they'd never want to get out of that game. But people always had more time than money, so people might try new games. Blockchain, I think, I'm really interested in, you know, what are the games that are going to be sort of big winners quickly, and those I think are going to be the traditional sort of genres. So we sort of mentioned like shooter games that are really big in India, and it's interesting. Shooter games are just much harder to make. So we've not seen a lot of shooter games on the blockchain that are sort of high quality. We've seen a lot of trading card games because they're easy to do, and I kind of think that's sort of one of the problems that we sort of have at the moment, where the tech's not sort of quite right there. We not have that many experienced teams who've had a couple of years to work on a game. And I agree, actually, in the long term, I think everything will go on a blockchain. So I think everything in a game will be NFTs and will be on the blockchain, because why wouldn't you? The reason we don't do it at the moment is we can't do it for technological reasons, really. But I kind of think I'm in the long term very sort of blockchain bullish about everything. You know, why would you just not do everything? That may be 20 years off. That may not be even 10 years off. But I kind of more generally, when I think about people who play games, we all know digital assets, you know, games are made up of digital assets, and everyone's very capable of, gamers very capable of sort of understanding not the economic value of these, because they haven't been able to do that, but they understand the emotional value of owning digital assets. And as soon as we combine that with financial value, which is what a blockchain basically fundamentally does, then I just gotta think, why would you not do everything on there? I mean, it may seem odd that, like, why would a bullet be an NFT on a blockchain with the value? But I kind of think that's, for me, that's the overwhelming sort of conclusion of what sort of blockchains do bring. And at the moment, we have these sort of interesting discussions, and some products will do more on-chain stuff. Most things do less on-chain stuff. But I try and think more about sort of the long-term trends. But, yeah.
I see from your face, Carsten, maybe you would like to add something here? Or?
Well, actually, I think at the end of the day, it might be wider than that. It doesn't matter how much you put on the blockchain or not. I think this blockchain thing has a good opportunity in decentralization. And everybody has seen in the DeFi space, obviously, they got knocked on their head, especially bad now in risk-off times. But then again, be your own bank, be your own insurance company, that sort of thing. I believe it's mighty. And it's not only mighty for the unbanked or here for the ungamed. No, it's mighty for everyone. And this is, I think, also possible within gaming. You know, at Elite Games, we are agnostic as long as the game is fun to play. It could be off-chain, it could be on-chain. We also use the term hybrid. And it makes revenues here and there. And if it's fun, you know, it will be able to be monetized. If it's not, we're going to die. And you know what? At Elite Games, we share with the players what's coming in. I mean, of course, you know, you can purchase yourself 10-cent stocks or Electronic Arts or Ubisoft. And then at the end of the year, you have a shareholders committee and you might get from the profit a bit of a dividend. At Elite Games, you get with blockchain technology, once we have our token started, every single week, you will be shared from the revenue that is coming in. That is, I believe, a very fundamental case where people say, okay, you know what? I can become part of a publisher who does all sorts of games. And that's only possible with these blockchain possibilities. And it, again, I say, from revenue and not from profit. And most people will understand the difference.
Interesting. Arjun, I mean, as also like John and also Carsten mentioned, like also like you don't need like a 10 or 20 games to play, right? How many games are getting built on Polygon, and what is the like a ratio, like what is like a top 5 you would like to put like in terms of like active users?
So definitely. So I Polygon, we have over 1,000 games. Like as of today, we have possibly about 23,000 apps live. So there's like a whole bunch of games. Interestingly, the most popular apps are games actually. So if you look at something like, so Abhishek mentioned Horizon Games, right? So Horizon Games has possibly about at least 300K daily active users. Chain Guardians, like there are a bunch of games. Actually, I can maybe share a link also, and I think Sandeep tweeted about this as well. So there's a huge amount of traction with games on Polygon. Again, partly due to, you know, the network performance, gas fees, etc. But also the fact that you know, some of these games have done something very fundamentally, like for example, one thing which I like about Horizon Games is that they've done something very, like, you know, very fundamental, but they've done it right, which is like the onboarding is really easy. Like, so you want to start playing the game, it's really easy, and these are some of the things which you know, coming back to like what we were discussing, right? At the end of the day, like no matter how many financial incentives you pack into gaming, like at the end of the day, people are playing games for a reason, right? Because games are fun to play. And I think that's something which, you know, many games need to start getting right. I always look at, you know, I always see that within gaming, play to earn has become like an oversold concept where everybody's too much, you know, focused on like sort of financial incentives. And then you know, we've seen this, I saw this earlier in the year with there was this very nice game, Sunflower Farmers, right? Which is a really fun game. You know, it actually was born out of one of the hackathons which Polygon had sponsored. So, but then, you know, because there was a play to earn element, bots, you know, got into the game, and then they started farming the crap out of the token, spoiled the entire user experience for users. So I think financial incentives can only go so far. You have to make the game a lot of fun. I think the games which are the most popular on Polygon are the games which are the most amount of fun. I've played several of them myself. So I think that's like super important. And like I said, you know, this is like super exciting for me as somebody on the growth side, that, you know, you can see more and more users now using blockchain technology, right? Inadvertently or advertently. And then, you know, sort of experiencing what it's like. And this sort of makes the case for even other bigger gaming studios, right? People who build these AAA titles to start, you know, to take notice and say that, hey, we should be doing this. And I think I think what Abhishek also mentioned earlier, we was talking about one of the largest gaming studios in India, which is, you know, getting into this battle royale game business with a token, where, you know, you can use the token in very interesting ways within the game to, you know, do interesting things with the game mechanics, with the crafting, etc., versus like a play to earn kind of game. So I think games are also evolving to the point where the token within the game has more utility than just a financial reward. You know, it actually is used in the game in some way or the other. And I think that's always the right approach. I think you know, the gaming companies which are going to succeed over the next maybe 6 to 12 months are the ones who at the core are being run by gamers, right? Versus, you know, VCs or people running financial models and trying to figure out, oh, I can put like $500 a day into somebody's hands. Like, I don't think that's something that's going to pan out. I think the games and the evidence is there to see. Like I said, like I've seen the games which are popular on Polygon. They are the most fun games. They're not necessarily the most lucrative games, but they're the most fun. So I think that, and I think there was another interesting thing which I also wanted to mention was that the primary distribution sort of mechanism for games today across the world is the mobile phone, right? So mobile games and mobile phones are becoming more and more, you know, powerful with time. Every year there's a new iteration. So I think that a focus, like a big focus of the blockchain world has to shift towards like, enabling mobile gaming, right? Because that's where you can get instant distribution to literally hundreds of millions, if not billions of gamers across the world. And I feel that the mobile experience for blockchain in general is very broken, right? Whether it's wallets, whether it is, NFTs, trading, etc. It's very broken experience. Like one thing which we are trying from our side is to talk to lots of wallets and try to turn wallets into DApp sort of explorers of sorts, right? So take wallets, give them grants, and help them develop DApp explorers, so that within the wallet you can sort of boot up a game and then start playing that. So I mean, from my side, I'm trying to make that onboarding a little easier. But I think if somebody can crack mobile gaming in a really nice way within the blockchain context with tokens, NFTs, play to earn, whatever have you, I think that's going to be the next big landmark, where I think, gaming companies need to figure this out. And that's when you'll see, 100 million people playing, a blockchain game, which I think is what we're in this, that's our dream, right? That's why we're doing all of this, because that's where the mass adoption comes from. So that's like kind of my view on broadly gaming, but also this very important mobile element, right? Which somehow it's not really being cracked really well. If this can be done, I think it's going to be really a game changer for many games. I think John has something to say.
Yeah, John, please go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly the problem for mobile games using blockchain is Apple and Google. So again, I think we're in this, in almost every respect, we're in this sort of very weird sort of situation where, in PC games, that, Steam as a platform was 15 years, whatever old, and that's sort of where everyone goes for PC games. And in mobile, mobile games industry, 10 years worth of people going to Apple and Google app stores. And at the moment, none of those sort of platforms are available for blockchain game developers to publish through. Or if they do, certainly on app stores, you're sort of putting like some sort of very lightweight framework through the app store, and then you're doing all the blockchain stuff like on a website somewhere else, which just which doesn't. That's not what people, it's fragmented. So I think whether those will change over time, I guess sort of the bullish case is that if the whole industry is moving to those, then Apple and Google are going to have to make a decision, and maybe for one of them, it's a competitive advantage to move first. So say Google decides it wants to allow that. Google at the moment seems a bit more open to this. So they say Google says you can do it, and then Apple obviously have to sort of react to that. But that's the massive thing, and I entirely agree with you that if the mobile side of things can be unlocked, then that changes. I wouldn't say everything, but that really speeds up adoption. But even in that case, Axie Infinity proved it had 2.7 million DAUs at its peak. It's only 700,000 now, but I can't remember what it was. Like 80% of those were side-loading APKs. So I think this is going to happen no matter what. It's just the people like Valve and Apple and Google can sort of speed up or slow down that adoption. But I just kind of think if you get the right sort of product, and with the sort of the structure of things like guilds, which basically are sort of education layers into blockchain projects, most of the world is quite happy with side-loading APKs. I mean, in the West, not so much. We don't do it, but clearly in APAC countries, that's just what you do. So I think that is maybe more of an open door than we think, but it's very much down to Apple and Google at the moment.
Interesting. I would like to also mention one thing, but maybe you can answer, team. So blockchain gaming is good, but like, for example, like a Solana kind of blockchain, which is like down like 8 to 10 times, and if you're hosting your gaming on that blockchain, I don't think so that's sustainable. So and also second question from my side is like, what are the technological side stake for the gaming team?
So what's the question? What the technology stack is like for game developers, or?
Yes. What is the technology stack of the Web3 gaming?
Right now, it's a combination of a lot of different APIs and the SDKs, right? And there's a lot of different vendors that you need to pick and choose from and bring them all together to make it happen. Where what we aim to do is provide different API solutions that we develop, but also from third parties. So we can say these are tried and tested. This is where we can support you with, for example, if you have the crypto on-ramp, if you need that, if you need to create your own NFTs, if you need to have NFT analytics, get your NFT metadata. Like Arjun was saying, provide that explorer experience that is indeed desperately needed. But we need to bring that into a layer higher than just being it on the API level. If we look at on the first question, as in chains like Solana, these are interesting chains as well, right? They get a lot of adoption, they get a lot of push from VCs, but we need to make sure that they can always be as up and running as what we can expect from, for example, Polygon. The answer to the question is which chain will win. I don't think there's going to be a single chain that will win. All of these chains are going to get market share. Some will come, some will disappear. I'm sure Polygon will stay. I'm pretty sure Solana will stay as well, but they still need to have a little bit of a learning curve.
No, I mean, interesting. I mean, because I'm not a gamer myself, so it's always interesting to see like how many times you go. I heard nothing against Solana or like they were like Polygon not paying me to steal that chain, right?
I had something to add also on the infrastructure side, right? So we've studied this a lot. Like clearly, this is our 24/7 job, right? To figure out like how you solve for scalability and things like this. So I think what has come down to it, like what the world has eventually come down to it, broad base, outside of gaming, even in general about blockchain infrastructure, is that the future is going to be multi-chain. So I think a lot of the things which Tim said are 100% true, right? So interestingly, me and Tim have literally been talking for a long period of time, literally ever since I joined Polygon. So and we've been discussing this, and the future is going to be multi-chain. Like this monolithic design of having one chain which will solve everybody's problems, it does not exist in any technology, right? Whether it is mobile operating systems, database, or anything have you. So the future is definitely going to be multi-chain. I think what at Polygon, what we've also done is that we've created another technology called Polygon Edge, right? And what Polygon Edge allows you to do is it allows you to build your own blockchain. So what we kind of realized after looking at Axie, right, which runs its own chain and runs its own game, is that potentially big gaming studios, right, which have lots of games. So if you look at it from a big gaming studio perspective, let's take some example, right? Let's take Electronic Arts, for example, right? Big game studio, lots and lots of games. They have the gamers, they have the community, they have everything, right? Now at this point, what they want to now figure out is how do we do like tokens, how do we do NFTs, and how do we essentially create like a more engaging sort of a gaming experience for our user. Now for a party like that, it just makes sense to run your own ecosystem, right? Because to an extent you've solved the trust problem, to an extent, right? And by running your own chain and by progressively decentralizing that piece of infrastructure, you can essentially solve for very high throughput, because public blockchains by design, right, are not like sort of designed for very high input output or very high throughput. They're essentially designed mostly for scale and for security, right? And by introducing a kind of a trade-off, like you can essentially create infrastructure which allows games to essentially scale to like hundreds of millions of users and still provide great UI UX, because ultimately that's what a game is all about. Like great UI UX is how you get engagement, and that has to be solved. So this is kind of what has been our theory, right? And eventually the world is sort of coming full circle to that. So I don't know if you recently also saw Avalanche have started talking about a layer 2 kind of a landscape where they can now bring in scalability, which is in stark contrast to everything they were saying 6 months ago, right? So eventually we see that the world is coming across to that where you have to solve scalability for great UI UX, and there are only a few ways you can solve for that. So this is kind of like how we see it from an infrastructure perspective, and more games and more gaming studios are going to be running their own sort of infrastructure, and essentially this will lead to a world where you have I'll give an example. So something like a bicycle wheel, where at the center you have your public chain, but then you have these spokes, right? And all of these spokes essentially represent different types of chains. Many of them would be gaming chains, some maybe DeFi chains. And essentially what happens is that your public chain at the end of the day becomes like, like a global interoperability layer, which is orchestrating all of these different types of gaming chains and all of these different types of other application specific chains, right? Much like how the internet has become a global interoperability layer between all types of networks, which is how we're having this conversation today. So that's kind of what we feel the future of this infrastructure looks like. But just to maybe deviate a bit, but I just wanted to sort of just cover that on the infra side.
Interesting. Abhishek, over to you. What can you explain me, like what is the gaming DAO and why is it important? Because from my perspective, it is also kind of like if you put like gaming DAO quite early, it will also kind of act as a hurdle for the game development studio, because then your like voting becomes like a distributed, and the actual owner of the game cannot focus on the gaming side.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, when you look at a DAO, we are a sub DAO of YGG. When you're creating a more community focused business rather than a user focused business, you need to ensure that the community is very close knit with the main core team. I think as your community scales and it becomes really large enough, what happens is your ability to manage communities at scale eventually becomes difficult. That is the genesis of IndieGG sub-DAO, which sort of came out of the YGG sort of parent DAO, because YGG had become so large that and they were attracting users from all over the world. They wanted a more focused sort of community only for the Indian market. At IndieGG specifically, what we are doing is we want it to be a very open sort of platform for anyone to come in and join the community. There is no barrier to entry, because whatever we are doing, it is to sort of create more financial inclusion and to onboard more marginalized communities from smaller parts of India, from more weaker parts of India, which otherwise they would not get access to any in the traditional world, right? So how do you create a platform where you're able to onboard these large parts of users in a very seamless, frictionless manner, let them participate in a global thriving economy, and at the same time ensuring that these small communities are able to take decisions effectively and they have enough autonomy within the smaller subgroups for them to scale from there. So I think it's a very that's the genesis of DAOs. Essentially, there is a lot of autonomy and freedom within the community, but at the same time created in a structure that allows the DAO to scale and scale effectively and grow. So at IndieGG we have different games, just to put some instance, right? Each game needs to have a different community. Each game needs to have a different group. Each game needs to have a different leader, because growing community for each game is very, very challenging. So how do you do that? You do that by creating these mini sub DAOs of sort within a sub DAO, or mini groups of sort within a larger group. So yeah, that's essentially what the concept is. And the more people are sort of close-knit, the more people are engaged, the more people have autonomy, the more people have freedom to take decisions, the more you see eventually, the more you see value accruing to the business, right? Because it's an established concept now that the communities are much more stronger than users. Because they play a much bigger role and they're able to create a stronger network effect for your business. So from that vantage point, and also from a vantage point that you're able to, when you're able to scale communities, you're able to align value distribution in a manner that sort of keeps the community engaged and keeps the community hooked to the core goal.
Interesting. Carsten, over to you. What is the secret sauce here to bring all the gamers? I mean, you traveled 90 plus countries. Correct me if I'm wrong. And gamers say that.
You want to insult me? Of course, it's way more, man. Yes, 90 would be less than half the General Assembly of the United Nations. Come on. Maybe no, it's more. Yes, but there's a lot of missing. So I still have energy in the country.
So what is the secret sauce here to bring everyone on blockchain and like Web3 gaming platform in next 5 years?
Yes, as we said before, of course, it must be fun games, but also then as it comes to the business models, you shouldn't be asking people to first purchase NFTs, maybe worth hundreds of dollars if the thing at this moment is hyped, and then you can start. And to a certain degree, I like very much, as it was put before, the education layer of guilds. But if it is, so to speak, the scholarship in itself only, come on, that just makes a business model which is doomed to fail operational for a bit longer, because it brings in new people who will then ultimately play, and then it gets bigger and so on. But if it's not fun to play, it will die. So don't ask people upfront NFTs, which are costly. Don't ask them to buy a token, same thing, upfront before they can participate. Or if you want to share proceeds, don't ask them to purchase a node, a gaming node, which might cost something like $50,000, and then they can share in the bigger picture. All of that is financial industry. All of that is not for the players and not entertaining. If that has been churned out, then we are going to talk. And of course, Apple, Google, and Steam and the others will have a reaction to the benefits of blockchain gaming. But in the meantime, you know what? By adding a layer on top of things, Elite Games is wishlisting its first title on Steam. You can look at it right now. We're going to release it sometime soon. There is no blockchain element in the game. But on the next layer, as we have our token, we will share proceeds with our players.
So is like a play to earn game here to stay or not?
Absolutely. I mean, I prefer the term play and earn, because you don't need it. So, but yes, absolutely. As it was with free to play, it was better to start playing a game without needing to pay. And that eventually became, everybody understood that. And now, of course, it's better that you can own. And maybe even in small doses. You shouldn't promise that everybody gets rich, because it doesn't work out. Somebody needs to put in the money which others are earning. But you can get a little bit, and why not? If you play for free and you get a little bit, or you get ownership, of course it's dominant. It's better than not getting that.
Interesting. Team, do you see any kind of like a user amount dropping because of the current sentiment? And what is your alpha for like the next 100 million user to onboard and to you, like onboard for them to get the Venly wallet?
Yeah, we do see less active users, and we also see a couple of apps that are just going to disappear because they lost in some of their funds or the Ether or their Bitcoin or anything that they raised with, and it will take some time for them to recover. What was the second part of the question?
How are you going to get 100 million user in next upcoming years that they will use like a Venly wallet?
Yeah, so we have two wallet solutions, right? One is the API. So if you're working on mobile and you want to build your mobile application, we have tech enabling services that are building on top of our wallet solutions. And then we're creating the wallet as an underlying tech provider as a service. And then we have the Venly wallet where we're onboarding the users. And this is then where we're integrating also into not only free games, but also into marketplaces and e-commerce platforms. So depending on where the users purchase the NFTs, whether it's on an existing e-commerce platform, it could well be once it gets distributed to our services because we integrate into those platforms.
Interesting. So as we are running out of time, we still have 2 minutes left. I would like to ask each of you to drop some alpha for the beer market. Of course, not the financial advice, but you really think like the people should do that in next 2 years in terms of like gaining knowledge or so and so. Maybe start with Arjun.
So do you mean what should folks and users do?
No, I mean kind of like no, I mean kind of like alpha for next 2 years, because the sentiment is definitely
alpha for next 2
right?
years, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I mean sentiments are like temporary. Like you've seen this before. Worse sentiment before, when during I think the COVID time and also before that. I think the long-term prospect remains like very positive. I think we are going to see the space move forward, and I can't take specific names here, but I can assure you many very big studios are are going to be announcing some very interesting things in the next few months as we start to see bigger uptick. I think, of course, the basic trends remain the same. I think the frenzy over economic value at some point is going to settle down, and people are going to ask real questions about use cases, about utility. And I think that's when the real conversations about blockchain adoption will start. From an infrastructure standpoint, definitely, the next generation of infrastructure with respect to ZK rollups, etc., something which would be able to get that kind of user experience for the ecosystem, right? Where games will look very similar to how Web2 games are, and operate the same way, is also on the horizon. So I feel that there's going to be, I think the adoption story has just begun. It's still day zero. And we need these kind of shocks in the system to sort of without sounding too brutal, to separate the wheat from the chaff, where you will see projects which don't have proper direction and builders die away, while good projects which have a long-term vision and the right kind of team will continue to forge ahead, and continue to grow. So I think the overall perspective from my side is very positive.
Excellent, Arjun. John, maybe a few words from your side.
Yeah. Yes, I'll just sort of throw out a couple of projects that I think are interesting for various reasons. So I think there's one, there's a company called Jam City, a fairly large US free-to-play publisher, traditional publisher. They've got a game called Champions Ascension that is sort of rather slowly moving towards its sort of on-chain release. But it's actually a fairly ambitious project, considering they're a Web2 developer publisher. And this is a fairly sort of, as far as I can see, a fairly sort of ambitious multi-year sort of MMORPG. I think that's an interesting one. I mean, obviously not financial advice, but yeah, they've done their NFT mints, and they have a pretty good roadmap. There's another one that's actually not so well known, a game called Goals, as in it's a soccer game. So trying to bring sort of, there actually are an enormous amount of soccer games using the blockchain, various sort of, from the management style to more sort of traditional FIFA style. The Goals guys, again, traditional game developers, being pretty quiet about what they're doing, but it seems sort of very high end. And I think I just think we're going to see, in terms of games, I mean, a bit what Arjun just said. I mean, there's going to be an enormous amount of very high profile stuff being announced that we don't know about at the moment. I think we're going to see very big announcements from all the traditional game publishers. Yeah, but those are two I would say, maybe not so high profile, but sort of worth looking at.
Thanks a lot, John. One for the team, maybe a few words from your side.
Yeah, on my end, I'm excited about some of the incumbent game platforms and developers that are currently building, that have already signaled that they're going to move on blockchain and that they're going to use it. I'm not sure if I can highlight their names at this point of time, but we're seeing that the Web2 mobile gaming space is going to get ready to move into Web3. There's still going to be a lot of education involved around it, but some of the platform providers for these mobile games are really starting to integrate blockchain the way that we expect them to do so.
Interesting. Carsten, lots of work lying ahead for you guys at Elite Game, but still happy to hear your opinion.
Yeah, so as John was mentioning a name, I dare to name drop our MMORPG. It's coming out this year. It goes by the name of Oathbound, and it is absolutely multi-year. As it goes, I've taken it over last summer. After it was more than 2 years in development, it will be a typical fantasy MMORPG with everything you will be expecting, and it will provide loads of opportunities with fundamental NFT value and play and earn possibilities. But as that isn't yet out, the Oathbound, I would say my take on it, obviously everything is on super sale at the moment. I mean, of course, no financial advice, it could still go down, but if you look for quality, come on, this is, as everybody says, this is the opportunity. If you still have some liquidity left, I think it will be a good idea to go on in the quality projects.
Interesting. Abhishek,
yeah, sure. So, yeah, sure. So I think gaming is still in a very, very early stage. It's a very fragile market. So I'll refrain from people investing in games rather than at least till the market becomes slightly more mature. I think it's a great time to learn because bear markets have fundamentally been really, really good times to learn and understand what Web3 game is about, what the infrastructure is about, how you can sort of use NFTs and stuff like that. Because we are all in the dark ages, and you want to make sure that anyone who's sort of a part of an early adopter sort of technology, when the renaissance happens or when the revolution happens, they eventually come out as leaders in the space. So I would highly suggest everyone to sort of play games that are free to play games, but you get rewarded NFTs through it. So I think that could be a great way for you to sort of foray into Web3. Or if you really want to play a game which is more gated in nature, you come to guilds. We obviously lend out assets to you before you sort of invest. The last thing you want to do is play Web3 games, invest money, and get wrecked, right? And that is a really terrible experience for a first-time user into Web3 game. So that's my advice. I wouldn't name drop. I think there are a lot of good games that are being built, like Skyweaver, Mini Royale. I think Arjun has also sent a list of top games on Polygon. Maybe check it out. But yeah, these are my 2 cents.
Interesting. Well, sorry, gentlemen, for taking 6 minutes of your time over as promised. But yeah, thanks a lot for joining us today, and really enjoyed like a conversation about Web3 gaming and NFT. So wish you all have a nice evening. I think everyone has a nice evening, so I don't need to wish morning. So yeah, thanks a lot, and looking forward to have you guys next time again.